Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with a quick little video to discuss the information about campaign that was released by CA today in regards to, of course, the Warden and the Paunch DLC. Now, we don't have any information here about Imric. I do believe some information was leaked or revealed already about start position and starting units for him, but nothing, no nice sort of infographic like this, so we're not going to be discussing that right here, but a good little bit of info about Eltharion the Grim, as well as the Paunch, what their benefits are going to be on campaign map, as well as skill trees and all that. So I just kind of wanted to go through it, discuss it. If you guys are curious in this information, certainly check it out and official Total War page. But without further ado, let's kind of dive in and go through all these skills and abilities. And I'm going to throw in my points, and you guys feel free to share your own thoughts and opinions down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. So first and foremost, we do of course have Eltharion the Warden, who is fighting for the faction Ivres. Now, this faction seems to be the much more defensive-oriented faction of the High Elves, not really meant for super aggressive play, though it does have a few options, it would seem, to benefit that aggressive play. But most of its mechanics do seem to be more oriented at defending your home turf in Ulthuan. Now, starting off with faction effects, you do have access to the Dungeon of Athel tomorrow. This was discussed earlier already, where you can capture enemy lords as well as heroes for interrogation, and that grants you various benefits. You also do get the Mists of Ivres, which actually can spread to cover all of Ulthuan, providing defensive benefits to Eltharion as well as allied forces. So that is definitely pretty cool. Some nice new mechanics for the High Elves, something to shake up gameplay a little bit. Besides that, well, recruit rank +3 for spears and rangers. In my opinion, depending on the difficulty you play, this is kind of irrelevant. Or maybe a little beneficial. If you play on normal, maybe even hard, or obviously easy, having extra recruit rank is really nice. Like, it does make your units fight quite a good amount better, and will take that edge you already have and push it further. But I think especially on very hard legendary, the extra recruit rank, you're not going to rely on these melee units really. You're going to be relying on mass archery, in my opinion. So while that recruit rank, especially for the spears, means they hold a tiny bit better, it's just not the most amazing benefit for High Elves. Obviously, it is an upside. It's not like a downside, but it's not a massive benefit. The other sort of effect here, diplomatic relations -80 with greenskins. I think this is going to be largely irrelevant, especially on the Vortex start, where I don't think there are many greenskins early game to fight, besides the ones that are fighting for you for your province. Outside of that, there aren't greenskins in Ulthuan, unless that is being changed in this upcoming patch. At the same time, on the Mortal Empires spawn, which I do believe is in the Southlands, we will check on the map in just a little bit, I think this could be much more impactful. And actually, you know what, let's check the map real quick, just so I can show. So on the Eye of the Vortex, you are starting in Ivres. Surprise, surprise, defending Ulthuan. So, kind of to be expected. Not super thrilled about it just because it means more High Elves in Ulthuan. Like, I get it, it's their home turf, but at the same time, I do enjoy when Lords have further afield starting positions. But in Mortal Empires, it would appear that they do spawn in the Badlands. And this could be, one, it could mean that relations penalty with greenskins could actually be much more detrimental or much more painful if you're spawning there. And it could also be much more impactful that way. So the two spawns are very different. I do think I prefer the Mortal Empires one just for the challenge side of it, or for the uniqueness side of it, since High Elves don't have a spawn down there otherwise. But whether or not it's more difficult or how exactly things pan out, I'm not entirely sure. Now, going back to the mounts, you do get a Barded Ithilmar steed. Not much to be said for that. A horse. Gonna be nice if you want to bring a budget Eltharion, but I don't think Eltharion is really a lord who you're going to be trying to bring on a budget. I think especially in multiplayer, if you're trying to bring Eltharion, you're going to bring him on Stormwing, get that Griffin, go for those aerial power plays with the lure of high magic. If you are in campaign, I think you're just going to wait until you get Stormwing unlocked. Keep in mind, Stormwing does not get Blood Roar. In tabletop, High Elf Griffins, for whatever reason, I'm not entirely sure, but High Elf Griffins did not get Blood Roar, and this has translated to the game, but if you were hoping for some crazy High Elf Terror Bombs benefited by Blood Roar, that's not happening with Stormwing or any of the High Elf Griffins from what we've seen. Besides that, for Lord effects, well, melee defense +8 for spears and rangers. Once again, I don't think this is too relevant on higher difficulties. +8 melee defense kind of is, because your spears, which you're going to run for your early game chaff line, will hold better. Rangers, which are maybe you bring them for sieges, but really I just don't think most people will run rangers. it's like, who cares? Okay, it's some extra melee defense. That's nice, but I'm probably not going to run rangers. The extra leadership, most of the time your spears are not going to be breaking, in my opinion. Unless you really screwed up somewhere or you're fighting some terror-causing faction. In early game, high elf spears do tend to hold very, very well until they're basically slaughtered. So, in my opinion, the extra leadership is not too huge of a benefit. They do cause fear as well when fighting greenskin. A nice little perk, can help break, especially goblin heavy armies in early game a bit better. And they are immune to barren wasteland attrition, which is important, especially for that Moral Empire start. Will allow you to go a little bit more aggressive, go for those high elf crusade plays a little better. Besides that, some unique items, the Fang Sword of Eltharion, the Helm of Ivres, and the Talisman of Hoeth. Now, I do believe some of the effects of these have already been leaked for multiplayer battles. Don't remember them off the top of my head. I believe the Fang Sword is one item he does get in multiplayer, but I'm more curious about the campaign benefits of these. But it's not really listed here, or really, I think it's difficult to glean from this. One would expect that the Fang Sword is going to buff your offensive stat a good bit. The Helm of Ivres does seem to sort of indicate some leadership buffs to the troops in his army, just by being an inspirational symbol of determination. And then with the Talisman of Hoeth, this is one I'm really curious about. It's talking about aiding in the guardianship of Ivres, which makes me think it might actually have impacts on some of your campaign mechanics, such as the Mists of Ivres, which seem like a fun little shakeup of Eltharion's play. Besides that, he does have some unique skills. Of course, this is the case for every legendary lord. But he does get the World Asunder, which is a cooldown reduction to Mistwalker Barrage. I'm not entirely sure how Mistwalker Barrage works, if that is a bound ability or something that's global, but I would presume it's at least somewhat beneficial. Public Order is -1 in a local province, which doesn't seem like too much of a downside. Not entirely sure if this means his own provinces or enemy provinces. It doesn't actually indicate, but I think what it means is that it's for your own provinces, but it's a little hard to be sure. Which is, in my opinion, not too relevant. Like, who cares? Getting the buff to Mistwalker Barrage, I think, will offset that for sure. And it does reduce enemy leadership by 8, which I think is actually very significant. Even on higher difficulties, being able to debuff your enemy's leadership, especially versus lower leadership factions like Skaven or greenskins and factions like that, it's very nice to break them easily like that. Then we do have an ability that grants your missile units unending volley, as well as granting +10 armor for shielded units. This does seem like a rather potent sort of buff. For a unit like Lothan Seaguard, assuming that they get both of the benefits here, I could see this being a very beneficial upgrade to them. You know, how exactly it pans out, I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure what Unending Volley is entailing, if it's simply a rate of fire buff, or if it's an actual damaging ability on top of the ammunition they normally consume. We will certainly see. Dedicated to Ladriel, which is a unique skill as well. Grants stock for Mistwalker. Now, Mistwalkers are a unique class of units. There are, as far as I understand, multiple different Mistwalker units. But this grants them stock. They get additional missile strength, and additional vigor loss. And vigor loss is very powerful, or vigor loss reduction is very powerful. It lets your units fight at peak shape for longer periods of time. And the longer you can deter losing vigor, the better it is. And especially once you've got a few chevrons into a unit, you can essentially bring vigor loss down to a minimum, especially if you've got built-in vigor loss reduction like this. There is an ability, Grim Discipline. This is another one I'm not entirely sure about what the advantages or benefits of this are. It does replace your martial mastery and martial prowess. Whether or not this is worth it is going to remain to be seen. If it's something that impacts your close quarter stats and you're going for missile heavy play, this might not be the way. This might not be a worthwhile skill. If it does provide some additional upgrades to your missile play, or maybe you're going for a close quarter style build, which I don't think is that likely, but you can try. You can certainly run it. Like Phoenix Guard and Swordmaster builds are certainly a thing. Dragon Princes, but in those cases, it could be valuable. I do think the expert charge defense will be nice, though, because it could benefit your, especially if you've got Silver and Spears or normal Spears, this could make them, actually Silver and Spears come with expert charge defense, so what am I talking about? So I guess if you're just running Spears, this is beneficial, but I don't see this as super useful for most high elf units, because most of them are either offensive and want to get their own charge in, or they already have expert charge defense. And this is the case of Silver and Spears and Swordmasters. So not entirely sure how beneficial that will be. But yeah, we'll certainly see. Storm of Blades grants him increased weapon damage by 55. That is a significant buff. Takes his 450 weapon strength up to 505, which is nice. 15% speed as well is very good. Unyielding March, more campaign movement range, always good to be more mobile. A recruiting cost and global recruiting capacity, it's nice. Definitely not a bad thing, but I don't think it's too relevant once your economy is popping at that late stage of the game when you probably need global recruitment. I'm not sure it's that relevant. Finally, Wall Warden, which I actually think is an excellent benefit here. It allows you to reduce construction time for wall and garrison buildings. Gives plus 15 armor for all units when defending, which is okay, like it's not bad, not that huge, but construction cost minus 25% for walls and garrison buildings. These two benefits, these first two, in my opinion, massive. It's really going to help. Normally, you want to build a lot of defenses in the campaign to prevent sort of rampaging or rogue armies and whatnot from being a pain in the rear, or random AI backstabbing and that sort of thing. So being able to build them cheaply and quickly is massive. And of course, then there's a lovely gallery here, including all the new units. Though, of course, these are the screenshots we have already seen. Look at that handsome mug. But moving on to Grom, who is going to be rolling with the greenskins. And, well, he seems to be, kind of, I think, almost an inverse in some ways of Eltharion. You do get, once again, minus 80 diplomatic relations with High Elves. Once again, if we look at the map, I'm not entirely sure how important this is. You look at the Broken Axis spawn here in the Vortex campaign. It's way down here. There's not too many High Elves around this area. This is mostly like Tomb Kings and whatnot. And on Mortal Empires, you do start it closer. You do start in the Massive Orcal near, of course, Carcassonne, Bretonnia, Bordelot, all them. But still, you're probably going to be conquering a lot of Bretonnia first, so I'm not sure how relevant the whole High Elf animosity thing is going to be there. The global recruitment duration, -1 for Goblin units. I think this is very good. This is going to be very beneficial. I'll let you churn out Goblin armies quickly. Suitable island climate, temperate island, which is nice. I think it should make it easier to invade Ulthuan, which normally has some pretty bad penalties for most factions. His Wa has a chance to contain pump wagons, which I assume is different. I assume normal Was do not have that chance, which is a little odd. Not entirely sure what the reason for that is, but I guess that's nice. Pump wagons are kind of cheap and crap, though, for like an elite campaign army. I think in a multiplayer sense, I think pump wagons are very strong, but I think from a campaign perspective, they're not that good, so I'm not sure how much this matters. And of course, I'm not skipping over this. He does get access to Grom's Cauldron, which grants benefits to him or his army as you unlock different recipes and as you collect different ingredients and sort of craft these different upgrades for your army. So that could definitely be very beneficial, a little bit like Clan Scryer tech or something along those lines, and definitely should spice up the gameplay and make life a little more fun. Being able to grant your trolls unbreakable, for example, even if temporarily, does sound like something that's quite amusing. Besides that, he does get the Chariot of Grom. This is not an AP Chariot, so that actually took me by surprise when I saw that, but it's a decent chariot. It's got 84 speed. It hits reasonably hard. I believe it's 430 weapon strength off the top of my head. 100 armor. He gets regeneration, which is not listed here, but the but it's certainly, I think, a fun mount. And in campaign, it will allow you, I think, to run over enemy infantry quite nicely. Besides that, you do get leadership +10 when fighting against elves. I actually think this is massive because his army is much more oriented, from what I understand, at goblin play. Getting +10 leadership on goblins, especially on higher difficulties, is immense. Because goblins, unlike elves, will rout when glared at. So being able to get that, I think on higher difficulties, like goblins go down to like 46 leadership, I think, on very hard battle difficulty. This gets them up to 56, which is still crap, but it's not as bad as 46. It puts your Night Gobos up into 50, I think, leadership, which is much better than 40. That sort of thing. Yes, your leadership will still not be amazing, but it is much better. So this will allow you to fight against elves, actually in general, I think, a little bit better. You do get a unique WA ability. What his unique WA ability looks like, I'm not entirely sure. We've seen all the unique versions for Azag, granting Fear and Terror. We've seen Grimgor getting more weapon strength, Azag getting physical resist, Skarsnik getting more missile damage, but what Grom's WA will be, I'm not sure. Physical resist, plus 10% for Goblin units. I think that's cool. Nice little survivability buff, and upkeep production for Chariots. Should be a lot of fun, though. I think Chariots are not necessarily the most optimal campaign unit. Besides that, we do get the Axe of Grom, which I believe applies armor sundering, as well as boosting your damage output in battle. What it does in campaign, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if it will have some sort of passive effects that increase his resource income, or like his how he, or if it allows, or if it'll allow him to get some ingredients or whatever the case may be. Just because it's talking about taking tasty cuts of meat out of his rivals. I'm not sure if that's just sort of being silly or if it's actually going to apply some campaign benefits there, but certainly going to be curious to see how that pans out. And then we do have the Lucky Banner, which does grant significant ward save in battle. I believe it's like 44% ward save. Obviously not permanent, but temporary. But in campaign, I'd be curious to see what it does. I wouldn't be surprised if it granted just a passive ward save in campaign, which would be very nice. Perhaps some sort of aura or map or army-wide buff. Besides that, we do have some unique skills. Boisterous Shakedown, which does grant additional income and magic item drop chance. It's pretty good, I'd say. Like if you're just rampaging around, looting and sacking settlements, getting more money is always good. And magic item drop chance, yeah, it's nice. Getting more magic items, it's always fun. Chariot races. Perfect vigor for Chariots and Pump Wagons, which is pretty nuts. Synergizing very nicely with that upkeep reduction for Chariots. Armor plus 10 for Chariots and Pump Wagons. Speed plus 12% for Chariots and Pump Wagons. I could see this making Pump Wagons and, honestly, Orc Boar Chariots much more competitive. There are also new techs as well in the Big Think, or tech tree as it is for the Greenskins. Now it's Big Thinkin'. So I could see the Chariots being a pretty powerful force in Grom's army, and this is definitely, I think, a good series of upgrades for him. Coming back, enemy leadership is -7, but only for Elven units in the local region. This I don't think is super useful. Elf armies tend to have excellent leadership, and they're very difficult to break. The wound recovery time is nice for sure, but the -7 leadership to elves, like, you're probably not going to be fear and terror routing elves, especially not later game when you're probably actually fighting the elves. So I'm not thinking this is a super good skill. Culinary Curmudgeon, more casualty replenishment rate is always good. Though Greenskins have gotten some benefits in this regard, I do believe the Hag, the Troll Hag, it now grants more casualty replenishment rate in an army. But more growth in all provinces is nice for quick expansion. More casualty replenishment is always welcome. Down to size, bonus rush large for Goblin units, and melee attack for Goblin units is, in my opinion, very nice. Nasty Skulkers will be even nastier for this. With this, of course, Night Gobos and those will also benefit quite generously. But I like my Nasty Skulkers. If this also applies to Goblin Squig Hoppers, this could be very powerful there as well. I'm not sure if it does, but if it does, the Squig Hoppers could become an absolute beastie. Gargantuan Glutton, more survivability for himself. That's nice. Obviously, can't complain there. His Great Immensity, leadership +9 for Goblin units. Huge, in my opinion. Stacking on top of that +10 leadership against elves, it's going to make his Gobos very sturdy against elves. And against other factions, getting +9 leadership is still going to be very, very nice. Roll him over, attacks cause rattle effect. Not entirely sure what the rattle effect is, but you do get +50% charge bonus, which I think puts you well over 100 for charge bonus, which is really, really nice. Then we do have the Language of the Boys, as well as the Great Unazir, which I do believe the Great Unazir is a AoE melee attack and leadership buff. It's kind of like a stand your ground or something, or not stand your ground, fight or die, like it is for Norska. And Language of the Boys, I believe, is a small passive buff to melee defense, leadership, and melee attack. Either way, some good buffs that you can generate in a small area, and should help those mass goblin builds just perform that tiny bit better. I do think, looking over the skills here, I do think Grom's skills are generally better. I think Grom is generally just a better honed lord from this, for what his, and sort of has a more specific focus than Eltharion does. I'm definitely looking forward to playing Grom, I think, more than I am for Eltharion. Of course, we have yet to see what Imric has has as well. But I do think the benefits that Eltharion get, barring the mists and the dungeons, which I'm not sure just how good or bad they are, barring those, I do think a lot of his benefits here are not that strong. A lot of them seem to be kind of niche, or applying to units that don't necessarily matter as much, like spears and rangers. I guess same can be said with Grom, because it is applying a lot to chariots, but he's also benefiting goblins a lot. And if you're running if your army is going to be much more oriented at goblin spam, then at that point, I think you're going to have a much stronger, and I would assume his wall will probably benefit goblins as well somehow. And at that point, I think he's a much better organized, or much better designed lord. And even if you're not running goblins, like the Great Unazir or the Language of the Boys, I think it's excellent, even for an orc-oriented composition. So just my 2 cents there. Definitely am excited for both of these guys. Both look like a good bit of fun. But those are just my thoughts and opinions there. As I mentioned before, if you guys have your own thoughts you'd like to share, feel free to post them down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to think. Or if you guys share my opinions, if you think they're just wrong, or if you have your own points and comments you'd like to make. I think it's always good to have some discussion. But I will leave you with that, and hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.